All right, welcome on in to another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast here on our YouTube channel. If you're watching live Monday at 6 p.m., it is September 19th. I am Anthony Broome, joined by Clayton Sayfie and Biff Tannen. I mean, Chris Balas. So good to have
Butthead.
good to have the three of you guys here. Producer Hutch working the knobs and dials behind the scenes. We will do what we do every Monday night, discuss Michigan football. Some of the topics coming off the weekend, a lot to kind of sift through now that non-conference play is in the books. Obviously, everyone knows a 59-0 win over UConn on Saturday afternoon. So, I guess what we'll do is we'll kind of go through takeaways. We will take your questions throughout. Told the guys before the show, we didn't do a great enough job taking your questions last week. So, again, feel free to get those on in throughout. If you want to move yourself to the front of the line, you can use the super chat feature, which was just a little like dropping $1 in the tip jar or however much you decide to drop in the tip jar gets your shout out and your question answered on the spot. So feel free to utilize that feature as well. But before we get into tonight's show, I want to talk about our friends over at the Rogue Shop, our proud presenting sponsor of our Monday Night Live show. The Rogue Shop is a husband and wife outfit led by our pals Richard and Shar, who are craft cannabis farmers, a husband-wife duo that specialize in small batch, sustainable plant medicine. I can't read my own reads tonight. Richard is a disabled combat veteran, and his wife, Shar, is a certified CBD consultant and life coach. The Rogue Shop operates out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and they work to not only grow and manufacture, but also educate the population about THC-based medicines. The three of us were on a call with them about a month ago, got to know them a little bit and what they're about, so we're excited to be working with them. If you're looking for products that can help with stress, anxiety, chronic pain, insomnia, Rogue Shop menus of products are perfect for you, and they're willing to hop on a live chat with you as well, give detailed feedback, answer any questions you might have, and also they have a special deal for you guys. If you want to check out what the Rogue Shop has to offer, head on over to rogueshop.com. You can use the promo code The Wolverine for 10% off. So we encourage you guys to give them a try. Check them out. Rogue Shop sells Delta 8, Delta 9, CBD, and HHC products that are all lab direct without middlemen. Some of the psychoactive products they carry are gummies, moon rocks, pre-rolls, flowers, dabs, diamonds, lollipops, hard candies, tinctures, you name it, they have it all. They have salves, lip balms, bath soaks, soaps, CBD flowers, hot cocoa, massage oils, pain creams, you name it, it's all there. All of the products are handcrafted for consistently potent and perfect results. Like I said before, they grow their own stuff, they manufacture their own product. And like I said, we were able to, Clayton, we talked about this last week, where each little care package that they send you comes with a nice little handwritten letter. And we've all received that. And I guess talk about your experience with them so far. It's been a magazine. I mean, just from my perspective, it's been a magazine week. Some of the gummies they sent are perfect if you get just the right amount of it for staying focused and kind of cranking stuff out. I feel like the last week or so, the three of us have been doing like 28 hours of work in a 24-hour day. So if you need that extra kick to keep you locked in, I mean, they've got it for you.
Yeah. For me, I'll say this: 9 hours straight of sleep. You know what? Needing hard sleep, fantastic. The one thing I will say though is that we don't, we love our sponsors, and we don't support things that we don't believe in. And I believe in these people, man. When we're talking to these people, they're just good people, and you get to know people, even just in a 1 hour conversation. And I love the mom and pop aspect to it. I'll say that right off the bat. So proud to have them as a sponsor. Hope you guys will support them. I know we're going to support them. I can promise you that. And just to really appreciate their business.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that we were able to hop on and actually talk to them, and they kind of, gave us the rundown. You can do the same thing on their site too with the live chat feature. So like, it's kind of daunting when you go on there and see all the products that Anthony was listing, but to actually be able to, kind of get feedback on what works for you. The CBD gummies helps you relax, unwind a little bit after some of these long days we're working. So great product. Excited to have them on board.
Yeah, I feel like when I read through that, and we did get a super chat from Brian here. We will get to your question, Brian, and your shout out here momentarily. I just want to wrap up on them. I feel like when I was going through the list of products that I was like Bubba from Forrest Gump, where They have this, they have that, they have this, they have that. So they're great. We love working with them. As I said before, promo code for 10% off is the Wolverine over at rogueshop.com. So thank you to the fine folks over at Rogue Shop. So we have a lot to cover tonight. We did get a super chat here from Brian. So we're going to get into his question first. Bring it up onto the screen. He says, you should ask Harbaugh if he's thought about Alex Orgy taking handoffs from JJ. He is Bo Scarborough 2.0. And I'm pretty sure this must have been the same poster on the board who said this.
He posted it a few times, I think. Yeah.
Well, okay, I got to ask, do we really get part of that $5? Is that how super chats work, or are you guys yanking my chain? Because this is exciting for me.
It's legit. And you and Skeen got a yen, some yen sent to you.
Oh, did we?
Ayako a couple weeks ago.
I'm going to take it and I'm going to use it and take a Yako out to dinner when I go to Japan.
There you go.
That's a promise. Yeah. So,
yeah. Anyway. The super chats are great. Appreciate you guys. And if you want to jump to the front of the line, be sure to do that. So to get to his question, I guess, let's just talk about the quarterback situation in general. I mean, JJ McCarthy is the starter moving forward. We know that. Cade McNamara, unfortunately, injured at the end of the first half. We can talk about sort of what happened in that a little bit later. But Alex Orgy is the guy that Jim Harbaugh brought up today. We didn't have to ask him. He brought him up in terms of a guy that we might see more of moving forward, just in terms of you don't want to get to the backup quarterback thing is more of a break in case of emergency type situation. But just talking about Alex Orgy in general, where does this guy fit in? Because he's an interesting player to me. I mean, yeah, he's taking handoffs, he's sort of like a faster, I don't know, Dan Villari type, but I don't know when you look at what they have at quarterback. Like, I don't know that that's where he's really going to be parked out over the next couple of years.
I can tell you this, that they have been experimenting with him in the fall in taking some handoffs and short yardage things. And it's probably part of the reason I think that Khalil Mullings is no longer a short yardage back option. So they really like him and his athleticism. Ultimately, who knows where he ends up? This is a guy who could play a number of different positions. And that's what I love about Jim Harbaugh. Like when he recruited Zach Gentry, for example, he probably had it in mind that, hey, if this guy's not a quarterback, he's going to be a tight end. Guess who I saw out there for the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend? Every time I see Gentry on there, I think, boy, they really owe Jim Harbaugh a debt of gratitude for changing his position, and because he wasn't going to be an NFL quarterback. So, but guess what? He's a 5-year or whatever NFL tight end, going to get a pension. And but I think that is how they're going to use Orgy at some point. And he's got to, of course, he's got to prove himself there, and I think he will. But they keep saying too that he's going to let him throw the ball a little bit. So I'm waiting for him on one of these snaps to run toward the line and pull a Denard Robinson, pull it back, and maybe hit somebody in the seam or something like that. So, but he is a talent. There's no question about it, and I think you will see that, buddy. I really do.
Will this be the game that Jabril throws a pass too? I mean, we were waiting. I think he threw maybe one in that season, but
did he?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I will say this about Orgy. I could see him ending up, being kind of a running back type or, also wildcat. I could see him, as Anthony mentioned on the message board earlier, like the Michael Barrett role. Maybe you play him as a linebacker or kind of like a bigger nickel or something like that. But going forward in the immediate future here with this quarterback, situation with Cade McNamara kind of out, maybe it'll be Davis Warren or Alan Bowman as the backup. But if it gets to that, it's not a bad option to have a guy like Alex Orgy where you get in certain situations, you can bring him in, take a little pressure off one of those two guys. And Davis Warren has never played in college outside of a few snaps, the other week and on Saturday. So, to have that option of a guy who's proven. I mean, there's only 3 players on this team with multiple rushing touchdowns. It's Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and Alex Orgy. So, I mean, he's getting some good experience here. I could see him being a factor if they had to go with, the backup route without JJ McCarthy in there, which would be, knock on wood, that, hopefully will not happen. But
yeah, that could be a disaster, fellas.
Yeah.
Well, I think they'd be a little better off than when they went from Denard Robinson to Russell Bellamy. But like I said, you're just one snap away from everything kind of going to hell there now, which is why it's been good that they had 2 starting caliber quarterbacks, and we'll see what happens with Cade McNamara. If he returns this year and when he returns this year. A couple things to put a pin on that Orgy question too. is Alex Orji 6'3", 235. I mean, he looks the part of a guy that could be a bigger back. For comparison, Bo Scarborough at Alabama was 6'1", 235. So he's actually a little bit bigger than him. And it sort of harkens back to the last Michigan guy that was a back that was that big was Ty Isaac, who was 6'3", about 230. So if they decide that he has that type of skill set, that might be something to look at in the future. So, when you look at his long-term status, depending on what happens with Jaden Davis or, what this hierarchy of quarterbacks looks like over the next couple of years, I think he's probably going to be too good of an athlete to just not have out there in a similar, not the same way that JJ was last year, but just from a, you just got to find a place for him. And there is no coach in the country better at having an eye for those position switches than the one that Michigan has. So, Hutch, we'll just keep going with questions here. We've got a lot in the queue already. Again, awesome. You could move to the front of the line if you decide to use the donate feature below. So be sure to check that out. This one's from Antoine Johnson, who says, do you think Jim will move RJ to linebacker? He's almost as big as Junior. He's been playing in the box already. It gives us more speed and coverage since Page is good at safety. I'll start this one by saying I don't think you need to move him at all. I mean, you play a lot of 3 safety looks now in these more modern kind of college football defenses. So I don't know that you have to move him. I'm sure there are, given the way that Michigan is schematically flexible and look flexible, there might be plays where he's kind of more strictly in the box next to a Junior Colson, but I think Mike Barrett's played pretty darn well so far. I don't know that you have to make a switch or anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And I think, Nikhai Hill-Green's coming back. Kalel Mullings is coming on. So, and they're going to need some linebackers, though, guys. But they got a couple good ones, some good young ones in the shoot there. But I like the way it's working now. And you can. The thing is it's got a bunch of pieces here, guys, where you can move them around. You look at Mike Sainbristol, using him in the Dax Hill role right now. You could play him at corner if you wanted to. So, Moten, there are going to be some times that they can play him in the box, but he's got, he's got the safeties mentality, and he's really played well there. I think it was Pro Football Focus. One of them was talking about him as an NFL prospect and just about how he was kind of under the radar as a safety. So, but he is versatile. There's no question about it. So I don't think you have to do that. But I do like the guy. I'll say this. He's really quietly been really, really good these last couple of years. And it's to have Makari Page now, who still has to prove himself. Let's be clear here. It's been 3 games, but I love Makari Page and love the fact that he's come on. He's a great kid and has really helped bolster that secondary. But you need safeties too, fellas.
Yeah, it's another thing where, down the road, maybe, any option is open, but in terms of immediately, why not keep him in a role that he's excelling at? And as, Antoine mentioned, he, is in the box already at times. Steve Klinkskill loves to cross-train these guys, and, so they're going to move around. And he also said something before the season that I thought was interesting, and he's kind of talked about it recently too, where you have kind of those 3 safeties, Rod Moore, RJ Moten, and Makari Page. And he said basically, they're a top 3. They're all 3 kind of starters. We've seen RJ and, Rod be the starters, but they're going to rotate because he wants them to be fresh because they hope to play 15 games this year, which would include the national title game. So, those are kind of your top 3. And to be honest, there's quite a bit of drop off after those 3. So moving him would, kind of take away from that depth too.
Yeah. And at linebacker too. I know there are still quote unquote depth concerns there, but I'm not moving a guy who I think has played pretty well at safety to take snaps away from, guys like Nikhai Hill-Green when he is back, or Kalel Mullings, or Jimmy Rolder, who I think by the end of the year, I think is going to be someone that is getting some run out there. So, we have questions about the linebacker position, but I don't know that they're, again, a big theme of the non-conference and things we're going to talk about tonight are do we have questions with certain things, or do we have concerns? And to me, that that's not a concern right now. Let's not get, Jim Harbaugh's been great with the position switches and having a feel for what the team needs and who can be put in the best position. But let's not get a little too overzealous there. I think they've got a good thing going with what they have on defense right now.
And I also don't think that RJ is quite as big as Junior. Man, if you see Junior up close, man, that dude's a monster. So
yeah. True. So let's keep rolling along here. We'll go to Richard also Brooks, who says, "What's up, Richard? What do you expect to learn after the Maryland game?"
I'll go first. I think we're going to find out a lot more about the secondary and the pass rush. They're going to, and the contain. We're going to find a lot more about this defense. I think the offense is going to roll. I don't think Maryland is very good defensively, and you know what, Michigan is. When it comes down to coaching at times too, guys, and look at how Michigan has done against Maryland in these last several years. They've had a decided schematic advantage, as Charlie Weiss would have called it back in the day. And there's no question about that. Special teams, we've seen them just absolutely dominate Maryland in special teams at times as well. Jay Harbaugh, one of the more underrated assistant coaches in the country. I don't know if we could say that anymore because the word's out about his special teams, for example. So, but I think we're going to find out a lot about the secondary because Maryland can sling it flat out. They've got playmakers. Okay, we're going to find out if these cornerbacks are as good as they've looked in the first 3 games, and how this defense really plays together against a team with high major athletes. So it's been a while, guys, because you know what, we could say everything we want to about 55 points a game or 53 points a game, whatever it is, and but the fact is it's for real now. Big Ten play, and we're going to find out if these guys can hang with some really good athletes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the pass rush is going to be tested. They've blitzed a ton. Last week was over 40% against the pass of UConn, and that's UConn. You still didn't have a sack. For context, Michigan only didn't have a sack in 1 game last season. That was against Georgia. So, I mean, you kind of want to see a little bit more out of these guys. I still don't feel like they've totally figured out who the guys are at edge in terms of, hey, you're going to go play the majority of the snaps. They rotate about 4 guys in there. 4 to 6 at times. So, it's got to improve a little bit, and we'll actually learn how much of a question mark or concern or whatever that is. Chris, you said it with the secondary as well. Obviously, you got to be able to cover downfield. They got some really good receivers on Maryland. I think it could be the second best receiving corps in the Big Ten behind Ohio State with Rakeem Jarrett, Dante Demas, who was hurt last season. So big challenge there. And then for the offense too, I know Maryland's not a great defense, but they get some pass rush. And, if you're Michigan and let's say you get down a touchdown or 10 points or something like that, you may have to throw a little bit. And if we see some of those breakdowns in pass protection like we've seen over the last 3 weeks, not routinely, but once in a while and kind of at inopportune times, we saw it with Cade McNamara a couple times, then that's, that could be an issue. It could throw your offense off kilter if you take a sack, get you behind the sticks. So, they got to be good, and they got to play a good 60 minutes. They've only had to play a good 30 minutes, these starters, and that's fine. But, now it's going to have to be the rhythm of playing a full game and the offense having to, click for a full game. And it'll be the first test, I guess, for JJ McCarthy with that crew out there.
That's a good point about the offensive line and AB. Your concerns about the right tackle. You think that's real?
We do have a question from Maze Pylon about the right tackle
that?
spot. Oh, God, that's called a tease in the industry.
Crazy.
Good stuff from Chris there. In terms of right tackle, we are getting to the point, and something I was going to say in response to Richard's question was, what I'd like to see is this depth chart is going to start to reveal itself. I mean, even if Michigan blows out Maryland, they're not going to play 8 quarterbacks again. You're not going to see 100 guys get on the field. I want to kind of know who's kind of firmly in that 2 deep in a lot of spots. But, I was underwhelmed with the play at right tackle from Trente Jones, especially after he was the guy that was kind of that was pretty hyped up during the spring and during fall camp and into this season. It needs to be better. He will have reps where he looks as advertised, but he's been losing one-on-ones against, here comes that term again, traffic cones from time to time. And it just needs to look more consistent than that. And I do think that coaches see that on film. I think if Carson Barnhart was healthy right now, maybe that's a battle that does kind of get reopened up. But Trente Jones has to be better. I mean, again, 3 games, I will call that one of the few concerns I have right now, though I think if it's not Trente Jones, I think that Carson Barnhart could do the job. I think that guys like Jeff Percy are coming on. Maybe later in the year, Andrew Gentry could be a factor. He's been impressive early. So I'm not ready to call myself out on Trente Jones or that the right tackle is just a rotating what's the turnstile? That's the term I was looking for. But needs to be better. That is one thing right now where that is, to me, I mean, no offense to him, it's just the fact of the matter is it's the weak link up front at the moment, and it needs to improve.
And I think he'll get better with more playing time. I did not see that question, by the way. I cannot see the question. So that was boom. You want to talk about it's crazy. And I do love the Maze pylon instead of traffic cone. You could also use pylon if you wanted to. So very well done. I think maybe that was maybe it was a signal there to you, Anthony. But I'll say this. I'll go back. This is before you guys were born. Trezell Jenkins, 1993, and I remember being concerned early in this season about they were blowing teams out, but you were watching them. I think it was Washington State or somebody, and you're thinking, man, that's an issue. There's too much pressure coming, and all it takes is one blindside hit or one hit, and JJ McCarthy. And I don't want to even think about it. So, but it's the importance of the pass protection. Clearly, is it's all about those tackles. So he needs to be better. I think he'll get better. And I agree with you, Anthony, about Carson Barnhart, or if Clay, whoever said it, that when he gets 100% healthy, he's going to be a little bit more in the mix there. And you open that thing up, and just kind of like the quarterbacks, right? Like Jim Harbaugh said, it's on merit. So whoever earns it takes it. But you still got a couple good options there. And Trente Jones is a good football player. He's doing some really good things in the run game as well.
Yeah, Carson Barnhart isn't as athletic as Trente Jones, but if you're not getting the job done, Carson has experience. He started games at left tackle. He started games inside. I mean, he could potentially, win that job if he gets some game experience going forward. I'm decently concerned about just that position. I think the offensive line as a whole will be fine. And Trente Jones is still a pretty good player. So as a whole, they're going to have one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten. But now that you're down to one quarterback that has, that type of experience, everything's a concern. Any sort of, I will say they've been protecting really well for JJ McCarthy, and he extends some of those plays. I mean, he took the sack last week when he had about 6-7 seconds there, and was kind of rolling out and just nothing was open downfield, but they've protected well for him for the most part. It's just been one of those, one or two breakdowns here or there that's kind of concerning. And Jim Harbaugh said it today, where you get beat. They've guys getting beaten one-on-ones. That shouldn't really happen that much against UConn or Hawaii or Colorado State.
The fact of the matter is, you just have to call it as it is as a result of the performance. To me, it's a little bigger than just a couple snaps here and there need to be cleaned up. You literally got your backup quarterback killed on Saturday. And you can argue that maybe he should or shouldn't have been out there. I mean, that's irrelevant. Your number gets called. You get put on the field. You have a job to do. You protect that guy. And as a unit, Cade got beat up against Hawaii. Cade got beat up late in that half against UConn. It's not acceptable against teams of that caliber. So it does need to improve. It does need to get better. But I think it will. They're too talented up front there for it to just completely fall off. Their interior is, I don't know if there's a better interior offensive line in college football. I would say that both tackles would stand to improve, though. But I think Ryan Hayes has gotten a bit better from last year. So we will go to our next question here. This one is we'll go to Deborah Bolton, who says, one complaint I have had over the Harbaugh years is 90% of the run offense was through the line. It looks to me as if he is starting to run through the ends more last year and this year. Do you agree? Yeah, it took a couple years, and he's no longer with us. He's not dead. He just has a different job. But Josh Gaddis always preached about speed and space, and all that ever meant was, people thought that meant Michigan was going 4 wide receivers, 5 wide receivers, and this is going to be a high octane, balls to the wall, explosive passing game. All speed and space ever meant was getting the ball to your playmakers with green grass in front of them. And that is where that was sort of the game plan we saw in the first week of the year with Cade starting. It's what we saw last week against UConn. We've talked about before. This is going to be an offense that is sort of, they think they can do it all, and especially with what they have at quarterback now. I think you can pretty much do it all when it comes to game planning and style of play, attack, all those types of things. But, at the end of the day, when you have a Ronnie Bell, when you have a Roman Wilson, I don't have an issue with those bubble screens and that's the key too. If they're blocked well, these wide receivers are blocking their rear ends off right now. Everyone who gets in there, from the top guy down to, the fifth or sixth guy on the depth chart. And when that's a strength of your football team, you emphasize what your strengths are. Last year, their strength was hammering it up the middle with Hassan Haskins. This is a little bit different of a group. So yeah, attacking the perimeter, getting those guys out in space, that has been such a delightful development and step forward for them, because a lot of times in the past, and like Deborah says, definitely early on in the Harbaugh years, it was more, all right, we're going to put our best on your best, and we're going to hammer you no matter what. Now it's a little more predicated on matchups, and I like that.
We have not seen the variety. We haven't seen the zone stretch play much. I think the zone blocking stretch play that, where example, Blake Corum, I think, scored on a long touchdown on that play against Washington. I think it was, where he's running that way. And Doug Skeen noticed that when we were talking the other day. So I think we'll see more of that and more of the center pulling. Olu Oluwatimi is certainly capable of that. We haven't seen a whole lot of that yet. So I think there are a lot of things that we haven't seen yet in non-conference play. So, and maybe that's what they wanted to work on, right? Get that offensive line together on the interior and get them some reps together. So there are a lot of things that we haven't seen yet that we're going to see. And to your point on the perimeter game, that is, as everybody said over the years, that's an extension of the running game. You know what? And then when you've got guys playing 7 yards off the line of scrimmage like UConn was, and JJ McCarthy sees that, and as quickly as he gets the ball out there, and with the guys that you have blocking on the perimeter, that is a great way to move the ball in chunks, 6, 7, 8, 10 yards at a time. So I like that, and I think we're going to see more of that. But you're going to see teams that come up with their corners and challenge them, right? So the complaints about, they didn't throw any deep balls, and why aren't they stretching the field? Well, when you can get 38 yards, by starting a play at the line of scrimmage on a low percentage pass play, or high percentage pass play rather, with a high percentage of chance of success, one elite player making a move and he's going to get a big gain, then that's what you do. So it's it's cliche, but it's take what the defense gives you. And I don't think we're going to see, for example, Jim Harbaugh running the ball into the line at Iowa into the teeth of an Iowa defense that is salivating, waiting for that. So there's a lot more to that playbook that we have not seen. It has not been, it's the cliche too that, it's vanilla and they haven't turned the page in the playbook, but that is absolutely accurate.
Yes, no disrespect to the guys earlier on in the Harbaugh era, but the personnel now, when you look at the skill positions, is more suited for this. Especially, last year you were running up the middle a lot because you had Hassan Haskins, but Blake Corum was kind of that change of pace. We saw him get to the edge. Now this season you're seeing it more. They're still running up the middle a decent amount, but I think something overlooked too with that perimeter, kind of quick pass game is JJ McCarthy's arm strength. I mean, that ball gets over there super quick, and next thing you know, Roman Wilson's got the ball, and he's got 3 blockers against 2 guys with a linebacker trying to, scrape all the way over. So, it's just favorable matchups, and it's kind of more of the speed and space, not to harp on the Josh Gaddis thing, but, then we have seen,
he didn't invent the West Coast offense, by the way, no matter what he thinks.
What's that?
I said Josh Gaddis didn't invent the West Coast offense, despite what he thinks. So, it is what it is.
And, thanks, Josh Gaddis, probably for watching tonight. But, so I do think that Michigan can continue, hitting the edge and getting some big plays. We haven't seen a ton of big plays in the run game yet. But as Chris, you said, I mean, that playbook's going to open up. They haven't been showing a ton. Not only have they not been showing a ton when the first team's in there, but the first team hasn't been in there a whole lot. So, as Ronnie Bell said today, there's still a lot that this offense is going to show, and he feels like they're still leaving some meat on the bone with what they are showing. So there's a lot of potential for what is the number 1 scoring offense in the country at 55.3 points per game.
Rich people problems, right?
Got it.
So
first world problems, whatever you want to call them.
We're going to go to a question from Captain Banana Peel, who asks, I know some of these names are great, guys. Also, the queue is starting to get a little bit dry here, so keep getting those questions in. Again, if you want to move yourself to the front of the line, consider using the donate feature below for a super chat, a shout out. We will get you up instantly or as quickly as we possibly can when those come up. So Captain Banana Peel asks, is our O-line push enough to play with Penn State? They are too good in offense that is forced to lean on the pass. It's a little early for me to look to Penn State. I mean, Penn State they've been good this year. I mean, what they did to Auburn over the weekend, despite the fact that Auburn isn't what it was a couple of years ago, impressive. You go down south and win a game by 30 points. That's a check mark for you. I thought their resolve in a game at Purdue was impressive. Purdue sort of gift wrapped them that game, but they still made enough plays to win. And that looks like a team that, they do look physical. They are chippy. And, but before you get there, I want to see how this team holds up in a game against Maryland. And I want to see them get punched in the mouth a bit at Iowa. And Indiana, they're probably still one of the lesser teams in the Big Ten, but that's a group under Tom Allen that will always punch you in the mouth and probably dive at your knees a time or two as well. So you have to be on high alert for that. But, there are those physical challenges coming before they get to that Penn State game. So, again, every week is, people look at these benchmarks throughout the season. They go, we're not going to be tested until Penn State, or we're not going to be tested until Michigan State, or God, we might not be tested at all until all the way till the Ohio State game. You can see stuff week to week that develops as a question mark or not. I've seen a lot of comments in there about the trenches on both sides of the ball. I think we've talked about that. We know what the potential is, but those guys need to be better. And I think that they will benefit from perhaps a slow start in a game to see how they respond to that, how this team responds to adversity, just across the board.
I want to know when our producer Hutch changed his name to Captain Banana Peel, number one. And number two, they are too good for an offense that is forced to lean on the pass. You mean like Purdue, who moved the ball like crazy and should have won that game? I'm not quite sure that I understand what he's trying to say, but I will say this: interior line of Michigan has the ability to play with anybody, and so that's certainly not a concern at this point. I think there was some boredom, guys, at times, and I'll say this: they kind of let down when they're up. And Skeen could see it in the body language as well. Doug Skeen, our analyst who played offensive line at Michigan and in the NFL. You know what? It's a tendency when you're up 3 scores to say, okay, where's my chicken sandwich? And let's go home and have some fun. And you know what? We did our job here. It's human nature. So at the same time, yeah, they need to be more consistent. This is not the Joe Moore award-winning line, but what have they've rushed for a ton of yardage still, guys. If you look at the stats, and they're up there. They haven't broken some of the long runs because, again, I think some of it is they haven't really gone to the edges like they probably will against some of these other teams. And some of these teams have really stacked the line against the run, so they've taken advantage on the perimeter. So I think this line is very good. I think it will prove to be very good, and I think it'll continue to get stronger. And let's keep in mind too that they've been banged up and they haven't been playing together as much as we expected them to for a few reasons. Number one, because of the blowouts. Number two, because some guys have been banged up. Trevor Keegan's been out for very massive portions of a couple of games. Ryan Hayes missed a game. So let's see what happens when all these guys are playing together here for a couple of weeks in a row.
Yeah, and for as much as we've talked about the offensive line needing to be better, one, it wasn't the best offensive line in the country at the beginning of last season. They got better and better as that season went on. They kind of got the momentum, got that confidence going, and then you saw it all kind of culminate in the Ohio State game. Two, there have been some really good things, especially in the run blocking department. Olu has been fantastic at times. Zach Zinter has been really good. I think Ryan Hayes has done a good job run blocking. Trente Jones has had his moments in run blocking as well. And then you've kind of had that revolving door at left guard. Giovanni Olhadi looks really promising, but Trevor Keegan is kind of that big question mark right now. How healthy is he? It sucks to see that, he kind of came out of that Hawaii game with an arm injury, goes back in, and then last week has to come out because of the same thing, it seems like. And this is a kid that was battling a shoulder last year and was kind of in and out. Remember mid-season around the Nebraska game when they had to play a couple, younger guards. So that's kind of the question there for me in terms of this offensive line. But I think by the time they get to Penn State, all those guys are going to be playing at a higher level, and you hope Trevor Keegan will be healthier too.
And let's be honest, guys, that Iowa defense is going to challenge them. They're probably every bit as good as Penn State's defense right now, if not better. So that's when the first big challenge comes. Their offense stinks. Their defense is really good.
And Iowa's defensive stats are really good right now. And think of that. They're really good as is in a vacuum. When you're playing with that offense, it's putting you in terrible positions.
Exactly.
That's a really good Iowa defense. They brought back a bunch of guys from that unit. They can force turnovers. They can stuff the run. I mean, Michigan had a tough time running between the tackles in the Big Ten championship game last year. It's why they had to kind of get a little creative there, especially in the first half before things kind of opened up. So still going to be a challenge. And again, Iowa's going to be playing, maybe the game of their life. And maybe by then, Brian will be out of the family business and they'll, move on to another offensive coordinator. Who knows what could happen in the next 2 weeks? So I still think it's going to be a test for sure. And then Penn State will be another big one because I do think their defense is pretty good too.
Yeah, to stay on the offensive line for a second, my concern with them hasn't really been the run blocking. To me, it's more pass protection. We've talked about that. And this is a group that in a lot of ways might be a team that has to pass to set up the run in some games. So the fact that some of those guys haven't held up as well against the pass, that to me, that's a bigger concern. But first and foremost, just, even if a guy is out for a bit and someone has to step in and replace him, I just think that whoever is out there just needs more reps. They all need more reps together. And that is something that will inherently improve. So we'll see. I think that to take some of the burden off the offensive line, you do want to see some more of the bigger plays down the field just to take a guy or two out of the box. Because I think when we've seen teams stunt and blitz a bit, that is where kind of they've had their plate full in terms of pass protection. So, by the way, Iowa, for those that are on here that did not know, noon kickoff next Saturday. So you avoid the night game. It's still a weird, by all accounts, a weird atmosphere. They have a way of dragging you down when you go out there to their level, but that is the reality of the situation. So don't have to worry about being stressed out all day and then sweating one out in the evening. You'll have your answer on that game before dinner time. So let's see. Who do we go to next here? I want to take one from someone who hasn't spoken yet.
Kicking chicken?
Kicking chicken. We'll go to kicking chicken.
How come I can't see these questions, guys?
They should be on the right for you.
It's not. Oh, there's comments. All right.
There we go.
Old guys and technology. Yeah.
We'll get you there. We got you on the training wheels protocol right now. So
yeah. All right. Thank you.
Kicking Chicken, who has Ohio State. I'll call them Ohio State. That's what they're called. Sorry. Ohio State looks soft on defense. They haven't played a good offense that will put them in tough situations. No, they haven't. I think that's my response to that.
I agree. And you know what? I think they have some of the same question marks that they had last year, and except that they're paying their defensive coordinator a lot more now. So it's going to be interesting. When we get there, does Michigan have the offense to, take it to them again? Is that offensive line? Hassan Haskins was a beast in that game, and as good as the offensive line was, he was a difference maker, guys. Okay, there it is. Man, stop it. Michigan's going to beat Iowa no matter what. And see, now the comments are bothering me. I'm going to turn those off.
Now he's distracted.
Yeah. Exactly. But I will say this. I will say this. That's a question mark for them. And you could probably hang in a shootout with them better than you could have in the past. So, and I don't think I think that defense, they figured some things out. I think Notre Dame, for example, used the Michigan blueprint in that first game against Ohio State and really confused them at times. So I'm excited to go down there. I think this is going to be the first time in a long time where, even in 2018, you're like, is this too good to be true? And it kind of felt like it was, and then it proved to be. But I'm not getting that sense this year. So, again, a long time between now and then, but I think that's certainly a good question. And I'm anxious to see what Wisconsin, what their offensive line does against them in the running game. They've been, Wisconsin always gets off to a slow start in the non-conference, but they got those bruisers up front. So it'll be a fun one to watch on Saturday night too.
First of all, have you guys had kicking chicken, the seasoning that goes? It's fantastic.
Never heard of it.
It's great. Try that on your chicken. But I like Ohio State's defense, to me, totally unknown, like how much better it's going to be by the end of the season. I think it's going to improve throughout the year. You've kind of seen them do some different things with, disguising things that you've seen in the first few weeks. They're probably going to do more of that as the competition gets a little stiffer. I don't know that Michigan's going to run for 300-something yards on them either, but this Michigan team's different. This Michigan team can throw probably better than last season. We'll see how everything plays out. We still haven't seen J.J. McCarthy against tough competition as the starter, but it certainly feels like that's probably going to be the case here going forward. So, Ohio State's defense, I mean, they might be really, really good by the end of the season. They have a lot of talent on that side. They just need to figure things out. But I do think Michigan's going to be able to do some things against them, and it probably will be a game where it could go back and forth. But, I mean, again, we're talking, 10 weeks down the road, 9, so don't want to get too much ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, I don't want people to get lured in by the Ohio State secondary. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, Hassan Haskins gets the credit rightfully so for the Ohio State game last year. Aiden Hutchinson gets credit. You won that game last year because you were dominant up front on both sides of the ball. And I haven't seen that from this Michigan team yet. And, say what you will about Ohio State or even, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Ohio State got dragged into a bar fight the first week of the year, and they took some punches and they counterpunched. And that's something that I didn't see that Ohio State team do last year. So, I would caution people to look at, to not just rely on box scores and what passing rate. Like, I do think when push comes to shove, and they've heard the BS all year, and they'll hear it going into the game about what Michigan did to them last year. I think that Ohio State team is going to be a little more ready for a fight. And the question is this Michigan team? Because I'm still waiting to see, we've seen the fireworks, but I don't know that I've seen the edge yet. So I still think, based on what my eyeballs say 3 weeks into the year, to me, I think Michigan looks the most well-rounded of any of the teams in the Big Ten right now, but they have questions that will be answered as we transition into October now. It was about this time last year where, they survived that game against Rutgers. They went to Wisconsin. They went to Nebraska. And you're like, okay, took some punches, delivered counter punches and sucker punches of their own. So over the next couple of weeks, regardless of what you think about the next few teams that they play, we will learn a lot about this Michigan football team. So we will go to a question from, let's see, Galen Hardy. That's great. And guys, thank you so much. We're getting bombarded here in the chat. So thank you for giving it. You've been the fourth co-host today. So we appreciate that. This is from Galen Hardy. It says, if we added more Pac-10, it's the Pac-12 schools, could you see the Big Ten going to 3 divisions, West, Central, and East? I don't see 3 divisions. I think we'll probably, I would have to think in the here and now, we're probably staying East-West with someone from the West moving over, or maybe they go to pods. But that's the biggest unknown about this, because there are a lot of logistical, I won't say issues, but there are a lot of things to work through when now you're sending teams across, 3 time zones to play games. So I do wonder, ideally for both of you guys, what does that look like to you, this next iteration of the 16-team Big Ten?
I think it's pods, and I do think that they are going to look at. I think Michigan and Ohio State are always going to suffer for it because of TV, right? They want good matchups. I really believe that. It's not going to be one of those things where, for example, how many times has Michigan played Wisconsin from the West compared to other teams? I haven't looked, but holy smokes, man! It seemed like they were on the schedule all the time because it was a good
7 years in a row, I think.
Right, exactly. And then it was Nebraska for 6 years in a row, and who knew Scott Frost was going to stink it up as much as he did? So. And because that, and if they ever get back, if Nebraska ever gets back, 6 years in a row, I think is what it was initially slated for, Michigan and Nebraska. So, they're going to want to see Michigan and USC on TV, aren't they? They're going to want to see Michigan and UCLA compared to, Michigan and Rutgers or whatever. So I think it will be one of those things, though, where it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be tough to manage if you have 3 divisions. That I don't think anybody's ever done that, and I don't think anybody ever will. So, but you know what? I've always hated the fact that you can get a champion without having to play everybody, or you've got one team with an easier schedule, maybe a protected game for Indiana's Purdue if Indiana were good or whatever. Purdue is Indiana, and Michigan's protected games back in the day of legends and leaders were some tough games. So it's never going to be perfect, guys, but you know what, it's so much different now anyway. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't to me. It's going to be one of those things where they're going to come and they're going to go, and Michigan's always going to have a tough schedule.
Yeah, it is unfair in a way to the Michigans, because you're going to protect Ohio State. You're probably going to protect Michigan State. And, that means you're playing a much tougher schedule than an Indiana, Purdue type of thing. And look, I don't know what they're going to do. It's impossible for me to answer that question. I don't even know if they know, because it's still up in the air. Are they going to add more teams? How many are they going to add? Where are those teams going to be located? The logistics of that. But, I like right now what they have with, it sucks that the Big Ten East is so much better than the West, but I think Michigan, being in a different division than Ohio State and having to play them every year is kind of that protected game is even worse. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I think it's going to be kind of a mess unless you go with those pods. and you make it as fair as possible for everybody and rotate those every few years. But I don't know. This is a tough one. No clue what Kevin Warren has up his sleeve.
Yeah, I think probably, I mean, if I were doing it, I'd probably be adding another conference game, getting rid of a non-conference game, and doing one cupcake non-conference game, one Power 5 from another conference, and then play your 3 protected games from the pod, if that's what it is, and then everyone else rotates. So, or maybe you rotate pods kind of like the NFL does. All right, this year you're playing the NFC West. This year you're playing, sort of that type of setup. Yeah. So, I understand and agree with, like, Michigan's always going to be at a disadvantage because they're going to play the games that put asses in front of televisions. Like, that's just the reality of this situation. But at the same time, if you're a program that is cut above everyone else, if you want to be in that, you want to stay in that tier with the Georgias, Ohio State, Alabamas, I don't hear those teams or their fan bases complain about the schedules a lot. It's just go out there and win the game. So
I've heard them complaining about some other team schedules recently, but and I will say this though, Anthony, if you're going to add a conference game and go to 10 and then make them play a Power 5 in one of the 2 non-conference, I would only do that if the SEC's on board with that too, because you're going to a 12-team playoff, so you're going to have more teams in. But right now, as it is, the complaints about Michigan's schedule compared to Alabama, who plays only 8 conference games, and then they scheduled Texas, but the other 3 are cupcakes too. So it kind of evens out in that way, and you're getting all the complaints. Not that really matters, but from the fans of different schools or whatever. Michigan, I don't care that they're getting made fun of or whatever for their schedule, but if we're going to really look at it and dive into it, it's not that bad. And I know it's been better in other years. I know that's a little off topic, but if you're going to add that stuff, I mean, you better damn make sure that, the SEC is doing it too.
Yeah. I mean, if this is where it's heading, where Big Ten, SEC are kind of more or less the new AFC, NFC, and whatever this college football super powered thing is going to be, I mean, to hell with it. Go down to 8 and let's play an FCS team in week 13 if that's what they're going to do, right? So,
and there's the bell. And there's the bell to go on to the next topic. Here we go.
Yeah, there we go. There's a couple bells going. Ding, 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 ding. We're done with that. So we'll see what happens. A lot of stuff to still work out over the next couple of years. So I want to take a question here. My God, this is what happens when you do it live. People start bothering you. From Drew White, who asked, a little lighter on this one for us. Will Michigan wear the maize jerseys this year? Chris, you're our resident insider. I don't know if you have any jersey intel.
I don't see that happening, guys. Nope. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that would be one of those things where if they did a one of those games again in the the non-conference portion of the season where it's like a neutral site game or something like that. But I don't see that happening.
No, this year it doesn't make as much sense. It would have been cool. They were planning out of that Penn State last season. Yep. But when you think of it, your road game, I don't like wearing them at home. And people were saying, oh, maybe they'll do it for the maize out against Penn State. Well, I don't think they're gonna like that contrast or non-contrast of having maize on the maize crowd. Your road game's at Iowa. I wouldn't do it there. It doesn't make sense. And then the other ones aren't big enough. And then Ohio State is so big where you wouldn't do it. So maybe not this year. Yeah. I don't think it's a huge deal, but it is funny how they went from never switching up the jerseys to last year is like, what are they going to wear? What are they going to wear? And it was fun to track and follow. And I like the different looks in every game. So it was exciting, and maybe we'll see different pants, in the road games and things.
I don't like the blue pants. I got to be honest. I don't like them. I like the maize pants.
Yeah.
So, and James Franklin, by the way, was supposedly the one that put the kibosh on that last year on the maize jerseys. So instead, they wore all the other maize accessories.
Yeah. They already had them ready. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just kind of like a big screw you, James, and then went out and got the dub. So, yeah, I don't see it happening. It will happen in the future. I just don't think it'll happen this year.
Yeah. How about this uniform request from me? Bring back the road jerseys with the yellow outline on the number.
Yes.
Look a little too much like Penn State when you play on the road right now. So we might have time for a couple more. I think we pretty much got burned through everyone here. Let's see if we can take. I like this one from Adrian. I think we'll end on this. Is Ronnie Bell Michigan's best wide receiver? Adrian thinks personally he might be overrated. I'll push back against that right off the bat. 7 catches for 96 yards this week I think 6 for 76 or something last week. I think that dude right now is far and away your best wide receiver.
Yeah, he's the best blocker. He is the best route runner. He's had a couple problems with his hands, obviously, and been really you know what? This guy is the heart and soul of this football team. I think, if anything, he is underrated as a teammate. There's a reason that he was on our cover this year of the Michigan football, the Wolverine.com football, the Wolverine football preview, because this guy's everything you want. I think Jim Harbaugh has said Ronnie Bell, he'd take 100 of them on every one of his teams. So he is going to finish with the most yards. And hopefully they can get some of these other young guys involved. Somebody, I saw a comment over there talking about the young receivers. Andrel Anthony, where's he been? Get him involved here. The kid can obviously play. But at Michigan, you're waiting your turn too, fellas. Cornelius Johnson's had a good start. And so, you go to the guys that are open. And Ronnie Bell's going to continue to get open. He's going to be that go-to guy. I don't think there's any question that he's the best receiver on this team.
Completely agree. I think he's going to lead the team in receiving as well. We've already kind of he's had a couple of those drops, but we've already seen him kind of emerge as the number one receiver. And I kind of like this core, how everyone kind of has their role. Ronnie's really good at some of those like underneath drag route type of things. He can turn up field. He can also, catch the deep ball. Cornelius can catch the deep ball. Roman Wilson has made tough catches, but also they're getting him involved in kind of that short game and getting him in space. Andrel Anthony's a guy that I think we will see more of as the season goes on. He's actually playing more than Roman Wilson, but just not getting those targets. Those will come. I mean, and especially, JJ with his relationship with Andrel, he probably wants to get him the ball more. So I think we'll see that. But there's no question in my mind that at this current moment in this season, Ronnie Bell's the best receiver. But I think there are some guys with a little higher potential that, could come on in years to come, including maybe a Darius Clemens down the road or something like that. But for now, Ronnie Bell's Michigan's best receiver, and there is no problem with that. He's a very good one. Led the team in receiving twice already. Probably will do it again this season.
Yep, I think you're right. And by the way, Andrew Anthony's a great blocker too. Sorry to interrupt you there, Anthony, but he's done a great job watching him downfield. So, and he's learned from Ronnie Bell.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where Juwan Howard says it all the time. Get ready, sir. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And I think when we look at as this sort of depth, I know there was a lot of Darius Clemens hype, and he's going to have his time. Probably an opportunity this season to make a play or get some extended run. But the way I see it now, especially after Saturday, where we saw the most we've seen AJ Henning all year, which was good to see. I mean, he showed a lot of things back in the spring game. To me, he looked like he had improved as a route runner and as a gadget guy that you could use a little more as a traditional wide receiver in the slot. So you really have 4, 5, or if Andrel gets some more run here soon, you've got 4 to 5 guys that, need to touch the football, need to get theirs. And it's going to be, again, back to Matt Weiss, rich people problems, something they have to figure out, but they are operating out of a position of strength there. But it would be great to see. I mean, of all the guys, I'm still itching to see more of Andrel Anthony. And I think that he's itching to see more targets too. So any other final thoughts as we close this out here?
Excited to see some real good football now in the Big Ten, guys. It's been a little boring, frankly, and it's I hate to say it, but when you're writing your column at halftime, and thinking about what you're doing afterwards and the other games that are coming on, I'd like to see a little bit better schedule going forward. And I understand that this was made years in advance. Some of these teams were better, but let's get a couple decent games on there and get more prepared for Big Ten play. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, it's not going to happen next year.
Nope.
Because they play East Carolina, Bowling Green, and I think UNLV. So
Murderers Row. Yeah.
Yeah. Those teams are better, though. It's a step up.
ECU is not bad most of the time.
Yeah. They're all right.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
No final thoughts from me.
No final thoughts. No, I have nothing further to add.
End of sentence.
As Jim Harbaugh said today.
End of sentence.
End of sentence. That was great because that's
podcast.
So funny because he will trail off and someone will start asking another question and then he'll just re-engage with the previous question. So maybe he should speak when declare when your sentences are over. So yeah, no other final thoughts from me. Ready for the games to get a little more difficult, a little more pushback, a little more resistance. And hey, you know what? Maybe they just keep beating the hell out of everyone, and this just goes all season. So, hey, if we could all have our stories done and wrapped up by early in the fourth quarter, fine by me. But we know over the course of a potentially 15 game season. There's going to be some fights in there. So, Clayton, thank you for hopping on. Chris, as always, thank you. Our fans are spoiled; they get you 2 nights in a row. So we appreciate you guys. Appreciate everyone who hopped in with the questions, the comments. You guys are the lifeblood of all of this. So thank you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video. Those of you who are listening on the podcast feed after the fact, leave a 5-star review. Tell us what you like most about the show, and come back and join us live every Monday night at 6 o'clock with the 3 of us here. We'll be doing it all season long. So for Chris Balas, for Clayton Sayfie,
Safety first.
It's time to get out of here. I'm Anthony Broome. Thank you guys so much, and we will talk to you soon.